Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 16 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 31, Fight On, Challengers. Well, it would seem that my tenure at this sports festival has come to an end. Izuku glanced over to Tenya as they made their way back to their seats, giving him a sympathetic smile. Hey, don't worry, Iida, you honestly did really great to make it this far. And besides, there is always next year, remember? Tenya returned the grin and nodded, though his voice seemed more unsure than anything. Yes, you are correct, though to be frank, I can only imagine where you will be in terms of power by next year. You might be running circles around all of us if you keep this pace up. I don't know about that, Izuku scratched his cheek. A chuckle came from the class rep as they made it to their floor. Well either way, I had an exceptional time competing against you. Perhaps we should make it a regular thing during our training sessions. Actually, that sounds like a great idea. Izuku concurred. We'd make progress a lot faster if we constantly had goalposts too, oof. The boy was taken aback when he suddenly bumped into something that was oddly soft, causing him to bring his eyes forward. Sorry, Izuku's voice was caught in his throat, as the first thing he saw was a thick, black tank top being pressed against his chest, as well as the cleavage that occupied it. He quickly snapped his eyes up, only to be met with another familiar set that had crosshairs inside them. Hiya, muscles. The Quark inheritor yelped and hopped back several feet, his face ripening like a tomato while Tenya flinched as well. Hatsume. What are you doing here? Tenya raised his chin at the inventor. Indeed, this is Class 1A's seating box. Why are you not with your own class? He also raised a brow at her suddenly changing back into her usual attire. And, when did you change into your shop clothes? May beamed widely, placing her gloves hands on her hips. Did that the second our match ended, Iida. I honestly can't stand wearing thin clothes like that. Might as well be wearing nothing. That description made Izuku tremble even more as he hid in his shirt. But to your first point, I actually came to see you. That made Tenya's eyes widen as he pointed to himself. Wait, me? Yeah, you. May extended her hand. I know what I did to ya in the first round was a lot, but to be honest, I was gunning to root for ya after making you my guinea pig. Her smile became more sympathetic at the last part. That said, sorry that you didn't make it. But I saw your match, and you guys killed it. I'm quite flattered, Hatsume. Thank you. Tenya brought his own hand in and shook the pink-haired inventors. It honors me that you would continue to cheer me on. Hopefully I can do better next year. Here's hoppin'. May sent him a wink. And don't worry, I've got every intention of working out a way to integrate those stabilizers I made into your costume. With those babies, you'll be unstoppable, literally. And just like that, Tenya's expression became much more worried. Why don't we pump the brakes on that a little, I'd rather use them rather than have them using me. May gave a thumbs up. I'll take it. Hey, there you guys are. Izuku and Tenya's sights moved past May, where Kyoka, Ochako, Mina and Denki were standing. Brian was also with them as well, who wasted no time in coming up and giving a congratulatory clasp to Izuku's shoulder. Kyoka also came up, playfully jabbing Izuku in the arm. You're on a roll, celery stick. Congrats on getting into the semis. The greenette rubbed his arm bashfully while Brian nodded in support. Thanks, Kyoka. Though to be honest, I didn't know if I'd make it this far. He set his gaze up toward the screen, where the brackets for the tournament were being displayed. I mean, if things had fallen differently, maybe I would have been eliminated sooner than this. But then, Ochako piped up, balling her fists with a determined smile. Hey, don't sell yourself short, Deku. You've been awesome so far. That full cowling of yours has really come in handy. It is pretty useful. Mina noted, combining speed with power in a way that balances out. You're pretty lucky, Midori. Denki gave him a salute. Plus, your planning's been top-notch. You've got a knack for this stuff, Midoriya. Izuku shrunk back a bit, rubbing his neck. You guys. Hey, let's not go praising him too much, The teens craned their heads back to see Stella and Sadie approaching, too, the latter smirking over to Izuku. "We don't want Mr. Power over there to get a big head, now do we?" Sadie saw Izuku wince a little, which she was quick to reassure him. "Huh, don't worry, Izuku, I'm only kidding. Still, nice job out there." "Yes, you were quite impressive." Stella agreed before going up to Tenya, putting her hands on his shoulders. "But Tenya, you were remarkable all on your own. Don't take shame in this loss, but see it as an opportunity to work harder. I know you'll do better next year." Tenya nodded firmly at her words. I will. I'll make certain of it." "Atta boy." Strongarm gave a firm chop to Ida's shoulder. "Come see me when you're ready. I've got more techniques I want to share with you." "Ma'am." Tenya saluted. The group shared a short chuckle before making their way back over to their seats, where Izuku and Tenya were met with more words of encouragement from the Autobots as well as their peers. Before long, though, the big screen changed once again, showing the next match graphic. "Alright folks, after that speedy first battle, it's time for a fight between the elements." From each end of the stadium, the competitors emerged. With his impressively quick win in the first round, it's time for this icy competitor to show some real competitive heat. From Class 1A, it's Shoto Todoroki. Izuku pursed his lips, seeing Shoto's more relaxed expression. The half-and-half user didn't seem to be aggravated anymore, so that was a good sign. Wonder if anyone said anything to him, but his thought was caught short when Shoto moved his sights up, the two boys briefly making eye contact before Izuku quickly glanced away. "Ah, darn, he saw me." "Ah, don't worry about him, Izuku." Kyoka gave him a supportive pat on the shoulder. "Ya can't let him psyche you out, otherwise, he's already won." Yeah, you're right." Izuku steeled his resolve, balling his fists. "Todoroki, I won't let you get in my head." Versus, after proving herself strong against lightning in the last round, this Thorn Princess is gonna have to weather another big storm. It's 1B's Abara Shiozaki. By the time introductions were over, the opponents had taken to the field, awaiting the call to begin the match. Despite herself, Kyoka couldn't help but snicker at that nickname. Hee, she goes through the trouble of asking Present Mike to not call her an assassin, only to call her an assassin again. Oh, the irony. Buck, who had returned along with Mina, tilted his head down to her. "What'd you mean by that, Kyoka?" "Oh, just a little inside joke." Kyoka winked. "If you ever watched Spy X Family, you'd know exactly what Thorn Princess means." Her sights went down to the battlefield, where Abara didn't seem the wiser. "And something tells me she doesn't watch much classic anime." While the Autobots remained oblivious, though, Denki immediately shot up out of his seat and began cheering, though not for the person everyone was expecting. "Woo! Yeah! Come on Shiozaki! You got this!" Both Class 1A and 1B were utterly floored by this, needless to say, with some from the latter class even peeking their heads over the wall separating their boxes. "Hold up, wait just a sec." A young woman with long, straggly, dark green hair piped up. Her dark eyes were confused as she spoke, exposing her sharp teeth. "Did I just hear that right? Someone from 1A's cheerin' for Abara," said a boy with sandy white hair and, a little jarringly, no lips as well. "Huh, never woulda guessed that." He focused onto Denki with an amused tone. "And wait a sec, ain't you the guy she beat last round? And you're cheerin' for her?" "Well, yeah," Denki affirmed, his smile unwavering. "I know, kinda surprising, but honestly, she won a lot more than just the last round, she won a lot of respect from me." His hand brushed the back of his head sheepishly. "To tell you guys the truth, I was kinda put off by you guys at first, especially in the lead up to the festival. But in the end, we're essentially all the same, we're just here trying to become heroes, ain't we? Sure, our experiences have been different, but at the end of the day, our goals at this school are the same." His cheeks became a light shade of pink as he scratched his face. At least, I'd like to think so." The girl and boy were both staring slack-jawed at Denki for a few seconds, only for another voice to enter the conversation. "Now that is quite mature of you to say." Sticking her head up over the wall herself, Itsuka Kendo had returned, the teal-eyed, ponytailed redhead smiling brightly at the blonde. "Gotta say, the last thing I expected today was to have this kinda conversation." "Kaminari, right. Her eyes then traveled across the front row, where she was nearest. And you guys are, Jiro, Midoriya, Iida, Uraraka and Ishido, right? Yes, on all accounts. Iida stood up, giving Kendo a bow. And you are Kendo from Class 1B. I heard you're their class representative. Exactly. And you're the class rep of 1A. Nice to formally meet you. Kendo directed her gaze up to her two classmates. You guys wanna introduce yourselves, or should I? Oh, okay, Kendo. The boy with no lips coughed into his hand and greeted them first. Name's Honanuki. Then, the green-haired girl gave a toothy grin and sent them a wink. And I'm Setsuna Tokage. Please, just call me by my first name, everyone does. Tenya brought up his hand in his usual stiff manner. It's truly a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I apologize if our classes got off on the wrong foot. But Kendo just waved that off. Oh, don't be. Honestly, between that one's constant badgering, she pointed to the still unconscious Monoma, his lip body laying limp on the floor. And Tetsu's passion, we haven't been the most welcoming. Hopefully we can change that going forward, though. Agreed. Izuku smiled eagerly. After seeing your quirks in the cavalry battle, there's no question that you guys have quite a bit of awesome power. I'd like to see you guys in action better sometime, if possible. As the conversation went on, Denki couldn't help but beam with pride. Shiozaki, things are going way better than we thought already. He glanced down to the battlefield, where he saw Abara's eyes locked on to the conversation happening, even at such a far distance. Denki's smile widened and he gave her a thumbs up, and while she smiled back, he could have sworn he saw her face redden a little. What the? Hey! The group gasped as they heard the bark of a familiar voice, making their heads snap up to the top of 1B's stands. There, standing atop the stairs, was Tetsu, and he didn't seem all that happy. The heavy metal user was showing his sharp teeth in a snarl, keeping his head lowered as he glared directly at Denki. Just what's going on here, Itsuka's eyes widened in alarm. Tetsu, wait, hold on a sec. Kendo, let me speak to the guy, please. The white-haired boy marched down and looked Denki directly in the eye, which only made Denki all the more worried. Kaminari, am I right? With a hard swallow, Denki nodded. Why yeah. I see ya hang around Kirishima a lot. Tetsu's brows furrowed even more. And, I'm hearin' ya cheerin' on our classmate up here. Denki began trembling the same time that Tetsu's fists did, the latter lowering his head and uttering, that makes me just so. The blonde screwed his eyes shut, waiting for the inevitable, only for Tetsu to suddenly burst into a fountain of tears. That makes me so freakin' happy. For once, I'm gonna agree with jamming yay, Kyoka echoed. Izuku couldn't believe it himself. Wow, and here I thought my mom and I could cry a lot. Oh geez, I hope the apartment's not flooded. As Tetsu got a hold of himself, he gave a big grin to Denki and extended a fist. Hey man, support's appreciated, really. Any friend Kirishima's a pal mine. And, please, call me Tetsu. Thanks. Denki returned the fist bump. Itsuka, on the other hand, sighed and gave Tetsu a hard chop to the head. Seriously, Tetsu. Ya had to scare the hell out of us after we've been playing nice. Gah, ow. Tetsu rubbed the new lump on his head, bowing to his class representative. Sorry, Kendo, I kinda got caught up in the moment there. Setsuna put her hands behind her head. Yeah, ya tend to do that a lot. Honanuki shook his head before waving to the 1A students. Anyway, point is, glad to get to know you guys. Hopefully, provided we can get a handle on Monoma, our classes will be able to interact more in the future. He brought his hand over the wall, extending it to Izuku. Sound good, guy. Izuku returned the gesture without question. Why yeah, sounds really good. Hey, wait a minute. The Greenette's eyes moved back down to the battlefield, where Shoto and Abara were still standing, rather awkwardly so at this point. How has the battle not started yet? At present, Midnight was trying to find that out herself. Mike, what the hell is going on up there? She whispered harshly into her earpiece. Gah, sorry, Midnight, had a freak short circuit. Present Mike responded before flipping the switch on his microphone. Testing. Testing 1 2 3. Good, we're back. Apologies for the delay there, folks. Just had a weird technical issue that needed clearing up. The teacher snapped his fingers, pointing finger guns down to the two students below. Alright, so now that we got that cleared up, let's begin the match. Go. Shoto's movements were quick and without hesitance as he pressed his foot to the ground and sent a surge of ice spikes out at Obara, only for the vine-haired girl to immediately send some of her hair into the ground. Within seconds, it grew out to create a thick, prickly wall in front of her, shielding her from the impact. Whoa, now that's a strong start, Mike said. To think, some grass is actually sturdy enough to protect from the harsh winter. Oh, hell yeah, Tetsu cheered on. Great first move, Shiozaki. Denki clapped his hands to show his support. You got this, Shiozaki. Show, I am the thorns. Smart first move, but it's not enough to save, MHA. Shoto exclaimed as he suddenly felt something wrapping around his legs. His head snapped down to see a set of thick, prickly vines ensnaring him, just as they had with Kaminari, before they immediately hoisted him into the air. But then, Obara followed up by repeatedly slamming Shoto into the ground, much to his surprise. My god, Shiozaki's actually giving Todoroki a run for his money. Present Mike commented. Just goes to show ya that the test scores don't lie, she didn't rank 4th overall on the entrance exam for nothing. The students were left rather stunned by Shiozaki's sudden display of power, especially those from 1A. Wow, she is good. Ochako whispered. You think she could actually win? Mina added. Izuku furrowed his brow a bit. Maybe, but in his mind, he wasn't 100% positive. In the end, while Shiozaki's quirk is amazing, the raw power behind Todoroki's can't be denied. I predict he'll probably come up with a plan to. Just then, Izuku let out a gasp as he predicted, quickly Shoto made his move. Obara was about to throw him clean out of the ring, when the vine around him completely froze over, right down to the root. Obara gasped as Todoroki flexed his arms and broke out of his prison, exposing several new cuts in his arms. A bold strategy. I commend you, Shiozaki, the half-and-half user said as he hit the ground, a cool mist coming from his right hand. But sorry, this victory will be mine. The second his hand touched the cement, a wave of thick ice burst forth and quickly made its way to Obara, encasing her feet up to her shins. The girl gasped and immediately tried to move, but to no avail. No, this is bad. Her vines went straight down to try and pull away at the ice, but after a few seconds, she felt her hair begin to stiffen up from the cold. This cannot be. So cold. Miss Shiozaki. The young woman brought her attention to Midnight, who wore a serious expression. Can you move? Be honest, please. Aye, Obara glanced around, hoping to find a nearby spot to try and plant her vines. But unfortunately, her entire half of the field was covered in the sheet of ice, and she couldn't shoot her vines across the field to Todoroki's side, either. Obara couldn't lie to herself. It was frustrating seeing that she had no other option, but Shoto had trapped her, fair and square. I cannot. I yield. Midnight nodded in understanding, raising her arm to Shoto's side of the field. Shiozaki has been immobilized. Todoroki advances. Incredible. Talk about defying expectations. Present Mike praised as Shoto went over to Obara, thawing her out with his fire. We were probably all thinking that the ice would stop Shiozaki in her tracks immediately, but she definitely gave us all more than what we were expecting. She is no pushover. Despite her blush at his comments, Obara still couldn't help but feel a little sorry for herself, hanging her head in shame. My classmates, I'm truly sorry. Don't feel bad, please. Obara was shocked out of her stupor after Shoto said that, the boy having finished melting the ice. He stood and turned to leave, but not before bowing to her in acknowledgement. You had me going in that match, I genuinely wasn't expecting that. Aye, thank you. Obara bowed back before Shoto proceeded toward his tunnel. As both competitors left the field, though, the students from 1B continued to cheer for Obara's effort, even though she lost. Hey, Shiozaki. Tetsu belted out, catching the vine-haired girl's attention. Way to represent Class 1B. You were freaking amazing. Heck yeah, girl. Setsuna waved. You'll get him next time. Itsuka cupped her hands around her mouth and yelled, We're so proud of you, Obara. Awesome effort. With all of this praise being heaped up on her, Abara couldn't help but feel a few tears starting to brim her eyes. She reached her hand up over her chest as she saw that, not only were her own classmates cheering her on, but also several students from 1A were doing so, too. And Denki in particular was wearing a very bright smile, giving her a wink and a thumbs up. She wasn't sure why, but she could have sworn her heart skipped a beat. She took a deep breath, collecting herself before she lost it. Come now, Abara, this is no time to lose composure. Simply go up and thank your friends for their support. As the next match was about to begin, Kyoka glanced over to Izuku in concern. The brunette had been rather quiet since Shoto's win, and she knew exactly why that was the case. So, you and him are gonna be facing off in the next round. Izuku gave a simple nod, closing his eyes in thought. You nervous? More concerned, if anything. Izuku muttered. Todoroki's motivation for winning is showing his dad that he can win without having to use his fire quirk. He lowered his head, cupping his hands together to rest his chin. But I've been thinking, Todoroki's left side isn't his dad's quirk. Half cold half hot is his quirk, and his alone. Well, it's kinda hard to disassociate something from someone when it's probably been literally beaten into him. Kyoka whispered with a sneer. After all, Todoroki knows exactly why he was born. Because Endeavor wanted to have the perfect All Might usurper, so what better way to get payback than to show off his mom's ice more than daddy's fire? Izuku sighed, hanging his head back and setting his sights on the sky. I know, but, it doesn't matter who he got that side of his quirk from. When two parents' quirks combine, they create something unique, not just a repeat. He glanced down at his side, meeting Kyoka's eyes. Todoroki may think it's part of his dad's quirk, but that's far from the truth. Kyoka was about to respond, but Present might cut her off. Alright. Time to get crackin' on the next big match up. Class 1A immediately set all eyes onto the battlefield as the two black-haired girls took their places opposite one another, both of them seemingly quite confident. This round is gonna be a battle of creation versus extinction. From the west gate, it's Keita Kiryu. And from the east gate, it's Momo Yaoyorozu. In the ring, Keita had her arms folded, wearing an eager smile as she popped the muscles in her neck. You ready for this, Yao Momo? She widened her stance, bringing out her raptor claws. Let's give it everything we got. You don't have to tell me twice, Keita. Momo created a metal spear from her arm, taking up arms without a second thought. I'm ready for you. Ready, begin. With the word given, both girls let out simultaneous battle cries as they charged forward, ready to engage. Momo made her move first, swinging her spear forward, but Keita was quick to counter with a swipe from her claws. The sharp end of the spear was knocked back, but Momo quickly took it in both hands again as she dove in, avoiding another swipe from Keita. The creator jumped back to her feet and whirled around, bringing her weapon up to stop the Soro parts user from getting another strike. Suffice to say, Keita was impressed. Woo, look at you go, girl. Do you take time to breathe, at least? As they struggled against one another, Momo retorted, HMPH, of course, but if I don't keep going, that leads to hesitation. And hesitation leads to defeat. Momo suddenly dropped, taking Keita by surprise before doing a low sweep to her legs. Whoa, crash. Keita ended up landing onto the concrete, which definitely wasn't pleasant. Of course you know, fish means war. She muffled. Keita picked her head up and called out, Tyrannosaurus legs. Before her lower appendages began shifting shape, becoming three-toed, digitigrade towers of muscle that she hoisted herself up on before leaping straight up into the air. Goddamn, Present Mike exclaimed, all while Momo was left speechless. Kiryu's Taken, advantage of her proportional weight compared to the amped-up strength in her legs, increasing her jumping power. What a maneuver. With one leg extended while the other was pulled back, Keita came down at Momo with a diving kick, leaving the raven-haired girl to think of what to do next. Come on, something where she can't see you coming, I got it. From her palm, Momo created a tiny, black ball before tossing it straight to the ground before Keita made landfall, where a plume of smoke enveloped her completely. What the hell? Keita couldn't stop herself from kicking the floor as she fell into the smoke, with Momo absolutely nowhere to be seen. Where did she, ping. Ow. She wasn't able to turn around in time to see the creator reappear behind her, rearing her spear before striking the weapon on the small of her back. Holy Toledo! Yaoyorozu just used a good old-fashioned ninja vanishing technique to get the drop on Kiryu. Kata's hands instinctively went to her back, wincing in pain as she pulled her Soro parts back in. Could the resident Dino girl actually be in trouble? Man, not bad, Yaomomo. Kata grinned through the pain. It's obvious, you've been training pretty hard. She straightened herself up and balled her fists, still ready for a fight. But I still don't intend to lose this match, I hope you know that. Momo spun her spear, standing tall as she brought it down to her side. Indeed. I'm not aiming to give up either. Let's keep it. Kata slammed her fist into her palm. That's exactly what I wanna hear. Time to go all out. CEPHALOSAURUS head. The moment she said that, Kata's dark hair actually began to retract into her scalp, before her gray skin began to give way to the thick, dense cranium that began to protrude. Along with that, several sharp spikes began popping out around the sides of her head as well, along with a few around her eyes and nose area, too. Yeah. By the time she was done, Momo was left with an uncomfortable churning feeling in her stomach after seeing the transformation, namely due to the fact that it looked absolutely painful. Oh, my god. Yeah, this one takes some effort. After this, I can't make any additional Soro parts. Kata breathed heavily as she patted the ground with her foot. But with a skull like this, it's gonna be worth it. With a mad sprint, she charged headlong straight to Momo, screaming, headbutt attack. Come on, get your defenses up. On her arm, Momo created a large, circular shield made of solid steel, holding both it and the spear up to intercept the attack. The moment Kata was within range, she thrust the spear, and it immediately broke against Kata's head. Momo brought up her shield to block, but, bam. Gah. With one hit, Momo was sent skidding across the field, her arm now filled with a pins and needles feeling from her elbow down. Can't stop now. Using her other arm, she took the shield off and threw it like a frisbee at Kata, only for her to headbutt it away. That trick works in comics, but not so much here, Yaomomo. But Momo just shook her head. If you think I'm done, you're sorely mistaken. From her hand, she created several more tiny balls, but instead of throwing them at her feet, she threw them at Kata's, where they blew up upon impact with the ground. With a new cloud of smoke erupting from the battlefield, Momo could only wait for it to clear and see the result, but she didn't have to wait that long. Kata simply came sauntering out, shaking her head as she cleaned out her ringing ears. Hawk. Man, you just trying to smoke me out or something. She popped a muscle in her shoulder before resuming her charge. Well, here I come. At this point, Momo was left without many ideas left. The sight of Kata about to ram into her was almost overwhelming her train of thought. All she could do is run, but even then, she didn't have many places to run. Come on, Momo, think, you've gotta find something to stop her or else I'm stuck. Wait. That's it, glue. If I can make an adhesive substance, I could, wham. URK. It was too late. Before she knew it, Momo found herself on the business end of Kata's charge. Though thankfully, it wasn't Kata's cranium that she was hit with, rather, her shoulder. Still, the impact served to take the wind out of her, and it was there she knew that she had taken too much time to think up a plan. Momo was about to enact her plan, though, producing a thick adhesive from her hands, but then Kata tossed her out of bounds before she could. Yaoyorozu is out. Kiryu advances. Midnight declared. And that's it, folks. Present Mike exclaimed as the entire crowd erupted into excited cheers. Yaoyorozu sure as heck pulled off a fantastic fight, but once again, we witnessed the explosive power of Kiryu's Dino might. Momo herself was still processing what had happened, staring into space with disbelief. No, I lost. She lowered her head and screwed her eyes shut, clenching her teeth in frustration. Damn it, I panicked. The one thing I promised myself I wouldn't do and I did it, and after all of my training with Windblade, too. Hey, Momo. The creator was snapped out of her thoughts and brought her head up, seeing Kata having turned her cranium back to normal as she knelt in front of her. With a big smile upon her face, she extended her hand. That was great, seriously. I honestly wasn't prepared for a lot of your tricks, I had no idea what you'd throw at me. Thank you, but I wasn't all that great. Momo clenched her hand over her chest, feeling unsure of herself. After all, you were able to power through all of that stuff I sent at you. Keita sat down next to Momo, nudging her arm. Yeah, but still, what you did throw at me, I wasn't expecting. You've got an eye for creativity, Momo, and I've got a feeling you're gonna get way better the more you open your mind up. Her words served to lighten Momo's spirits, if only by a little bit. You really think so? I know so. Keita affirmed with a smirk before pointing down at Momo's hand. Now, could I have my jacket back, please? Momo blinked, only now noticing that Keita was just wearing the black undershirt of her uniform. She glanced down to her hand, to see the other girl's gym jacket stuck to it via the adhesive she had created. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. With an embarrassed blush, Momo brought her other hand up into the sticky substance. Here, let me make something to get the adhesive off. Keita could only laugh as Momo did her thing. Ha ha ha. Oh man, now if you'd gotten that attack off, then I probably would have been stopped. Wow, it's really stuck there, huh? I used rubber cement. Up in the stands, the students of 1A were both quite happy and a little upset at the outcome, especially Kyoka. Man, Momo lost, but Keita won. Talk about feeling conflicted. I can certainly see why. Orion piped up, the Autobot leader focusing on her. After all, she did best you in the previous round, so it stands to reason you wished for her to move on. Yeah, hit the nail on the head there, Op. Kyoka affirmed before smiling down to the duo on the field, all while both of them made their way back into the tunnels. But hey, I'm at least happy for Keita that she's moving on, and I'm sure Momo is, too. In the seats higher up, Mei was currently scribbling down ideas in a small notepad after having watched that battle. Her manic cackles and giggles were definitely attracting the attention of the other 1A students, who were staring at her as if she had a second head. Oh, I've just gotten tons of ideas for some new babies, for sure. Dino Girl's got so much going on for her already, but perhaps some stimulating items could help ease the stress on her quirk to make those more complex transformations easier. Suyu leaned forward, glancing to Mina in confusion. Mina. I get how you guys know these heroes here, but, how did you get to know her? Who? Mei. Mina grinned and waved her hand. Oh, don't you worry about her. We met while getting our uniforms upgraded. She's really nice, despite her being a bit over the top. Hey, a bit, is a little exaggerating. Buck chortled before jabbing his thumb over his shoulder. Oh, and don't look now, but we've got a visitor over here. With a collective, the students all craned their heads back, and were surprised to be greeted by none other than Abara. The vine-haired student bowed courteously to them all. Greetings, everyone. I hope I'm not interrupting. Shish Shiozaki. Denki abruptly stood up, shocked to see her there. I didn't think you'd, but then he ended up tripping over the seats, falling flat on his face right in the walkway, much to the amusement of his classmates. HMPH, damn it. Abara let out a gasp, making her way down to see if he was alright. Kaminari, oh my goodness, are you hurt? As if suddenly receiving a ton of energy, Denki pulled his head up and gave a thumbs up, despite a few scratches and a bloody nose. Who, me? Never felt better. By her expression alone, Denki could tell she wasn't convinced, but he decided to change the subject quickly. Anyway, what are you doing here? Your class is. I know, and I greeted them already. Abara informed, sending him a soft smile. However, I wanted to thank all of you for cheering for me, even if I was against your classmate. It was, very thoughtful. Yeah. Of course. Denki affirmed, his cheeks flushing a faint shade of red. It's honestly no problem at all. And hey, we even got our classes on the same page, at least I think. Jury still stands on Monoma. Abara deadpanned at that. HMPH, yes, he's rather persistent on his views. She shook her head and put her smile back on. But regardless, I'm glad that hostilities between our classes have been lowered. The young woman brushed some of her vines behind her ear as she turned to leave, not once taking her eyes off the blonde. But I suppose I really should be headed back to my seat. I suppose I'll see you later. Denki wasted no time in nodding. Yeah, of course. He could have sworn he saw Abara's eyes lighten up just the tiniest bit before she went off, and the moment she was out of sight, Denki collapsed again, his cheeks beat red. "Oh my god, that was so stressful." "You saw that, right?" Izuku muttered. "I did, and I'm still kind of processing the fact that Jamming Ye himself apparently has game." Kyoka replied. Sunstreaker stood up from his seat and walked over to his charge, offering a hand. "What did I tell ya, Denki? To win the hearts of ladies, all ya gotta do is be yourself." He offered a wink and added, "No pickup lines required." The electrification user sighed, facepalming at the situation. "Man, to think I've been going about it all wrong all these years," but then, he took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Well, not anymore. That changes, starting now." He glanced over to see Abara conversing with Setsuna, who appeared to be teasing her considering that she was blushing. "Yeah, no doubt about it. Alright, folks, time for the final match of the quarter semis, and this one's gonna be an endurance run, I can already tell." Down on the battlefield, Bakugo and Eijiro stood opposite of one another, the former wearing an eager grin while Present Mike introduced them. "First up, it's the rock-hard guy who managed to overcome his equal in many ways to get this far. From Class 1A, it's Eijiro Kirishima. Versus, the blonde bomb boy with absolutely no regard for how far he's willing to go to win. From the same class, Katsuki Bakugo. Come on, Kirishima, you got this." The stands of 1A and 1B went silent as both Sideswipe and Tetsu practically echoed one another, leading both of them to eye the other in surprise. "Hey, what gives, man?" Tetsu irritably said first. "Ya copying me or something?" "Oh, look who's talkin'," Sid retorted. "The hell's that supposed to mean?" Sid narrowed his eyes right back at him. "Oh, you know what I mean. Being a copycat to Eijiro ain't cool, bro." Tetsu clenched his teeth and furrowed his brow. "Hey, come on, dude. Not my fault that we basically have similar quirks." He crossed his arms and faced away from the Autobot warrior. "And besides, I've gotten over it. He and I actually have a lot more in common than just our quirks, so to me and him, everything's cool." Stella suddenly stood up and grasped Sid by the shoulder with a tight squeeze. "Yeah, and besides, Sid, weren't you acting all emotional by their handshake earlier?" She forced a smile whilst also giving him a death glare. "So why don't you learn to play nice, huh?" Stella increased her grip, making Sid cry out and fall to his knees. "Ah, okay, you're right. I'm being a hypocrite." Sid bowed his head to Tetsu apologetically. "Sorry for getting in your grill about that. Eijiro's basically my best friend, so I kind of felt like I should defend him, ya know." "You're his best friend," Tetsu uttered before smiling as well. "Huh, well why didn't ya say so?" Tetsu reached across the barrier and extended his hand to Sid. "I said this before, but any friend of Kirishima's is a friend of mine. So why don't we both cheer for, I am as hard as we can?" Sid blinked in surprise, but quickly smiled and gave a chuckle, accepting the handshake. HM, you've got a deal. Let's do it." "That was surprisingly fast," Mina commented. Buck nodded in surprise. "Yeah, I mean, they pretty much talked over the first part of the battle." The heavy metal user and Autobot warrior were taken aback by that. Huh. Their heads snapped down to the battlefield where, indeed, Kirishima and Bakugo were duking it out in close quarters combat, much to their shock. No way. Sideswipe shouted. "Kirishima, go straight for his chin," Tetsu advised. "Back down with the fight." Eijiro belted out a roar as he threw a hardened punch at Bakugo's face, thought the ashen blonde was able to just barely get out of the way. He still got a scrape on his cheek, but it could have been far worse. Bakugo then quickly flung his hand up at Eijiro's side and let a blast loose, blowing off part of Kirishima's gym uniform, and nothing else. "Huh. Nice try, but that's not gonna work on me, Explosion Boy." HMPH, he's still going strong. Bakugo thought to himself, but how long can he keep his hardening up? He didn't have much time to think about that as Eijiro kept going in for more blows, so Bakugo had no choice but to keep on avoiding the hits. Bakugo's having a heck of a time dodging Kirishima's fierce attacks. Present Mike exclaimed. Kyoka, for her part, was rather surprised. Huh, I don't think I've ever seen Bakugo on the defensive like this. Izuku nodded in agreement. Yeah, it's a rare sight, for sure. But while Kirishima's quirk seems simple on the surface, it's still both effective in terms of defense and offense. He focused on Bakugo's movements, memorizing them in case he needed to later. But I have no doubt that he's going to try and counter soon. As good as Kirishima is, I doubt he can keep his hardening up for long. Sure enough, Bakugo suddenly ducked another swing and smashed his hand into Eijiro's other side, blowing him back with a strong explosion. This time, however, there was blood visibly trickling out of tiny cracks in his hardened skin. Whoa! Bakugo's countering again. Present Mike leaned forward in his seat after seeing the blood. But what's this? It seems to be working this time. Hey, I knew it. Bakugo smirked at his opponent. You've been straining to keep your body rock hard, and after a full day's worth of doing it, you're starting to slow down. Eijiro breathed hard as he was lectured, wincing at the truth. But this fight is what's testing that. You've been overusing your quirk, and sooner or later, you'll fall apart. Boom. With a powerful thrust of his arms, Bakugo sent an explosion straight at Eijiro, the redhead bringing his arms up to block it, only for the ashen blonde to let loose with a volley of smaller ones. Gah. No. Too much. Eijiro howled, his clothes being ripped apart by the blasts. This is the finishing blow. Die. With one more swipe, Bakugo blasted Kirishima back, his body finally unhardening as he fell unconscious. As Kirishima landed, Bakugo breathed hard, supporting himself with his hands on his knees. Ha, there, now I understand why you were trying to avoid a drawn-out fight with me. Midnight gave her ruling soon after, Kirishima has been knocked out. Bakugo is the winner. A displeased groan came from both Hero Course stands, with Tetsu taking more issue with the outcome than most. What were you doing, you idiot? I thought you had more guts than that, Kirishima. Sid double facepalmed, running his hands across his eyelids in frustration. Apparently, did I, kid. Well, I know what he and I are doing over his 2-day break. He gave a sigh as he watched Eijiro get stretchered out, again. Oh well, ya did good anyway, man. Great effort. With that, Present Mike spoke up to the crowd once again as they watched Bakugo move up the bracket. And with that vicious carpet bombing, Bakugo advances to the third round. On the big screen, the visages of Izuku, Shoto, Keita and Bakugo all appeared, leading the audience to cheer even louder. Ladies and gentlemen, our final four. Well, I guess that's my cue. Izuku stood up, giving his friends a smile. Wish me luck, everybody. Hey. Without warning, Izuku suddenly felt a jack wrap around his arm and spin him around, bringing him face to face with Kyoka, giving him a serious look. Just keep in mind, this has been Todoroki's goal ever since he called you out, so make sure to not back down, K. Well. And also, Kyoka bumped her fist against his chest, giving him a wink and a smile. Sock him once for me, would ya? For the second time in an hour, Izuku's cheeks ripened and he quickly felt weak in the knees. She's so close, however, as that thought crossed his mind. His thoughts also returned to Kaminari and Shiozaki's interaction just a few minutes before, and that's when he steeled himself. Come on, Midoriya, if Kaminari can talk like that to a girl he just met, what does that say about you having trouble speaking to your best friend? He breathed deeply and put on a determined smile, raising his own fist to hers. Right, I'll do my best. That's the spirit. Kyoka gave him a fist bump before he went off. Good luck, Izuku. With a nod, Izuku made his way through the seats, only for Iida to stand up as well. Oh no, I nearly forgot. The spectacled student reached into his pocket, procuring his cell phone. I meant to give my brother a call earlier. He spun around and bowed to his class. My apologies, everyone, please excuse me. Oh, it's no problem, Tenya. Stella waved. Go call your brother, I'm sure you won't miss a thing. Up in the top row of seats, Mei also gave him a thumbs up. Yeah, go ahead, Specs. If the round starts and you're not here, one of us will come and get ya. Thank you, Hatsume, Stella. With that, Tenya rushed off after Izuku, briefly stopping next to his friend before he went down. In Midoriya, I have the utmost faith in your victory. Right, thanks Iida. Have a good call with your brother. Once the two had parted ways, Izuku proceeded down into the lower corridors of the stadium, walking the familiar path toward the entry tunnels into the stadium proper. All the while, his mind was racing, trying to think up strategies that could potentially take Shoto off his game, while also trying to get the half-and-half user on the ball as well. He won't use his fire, so that's something I have to rectify. I need to show him that it's his quirk not. His train of thought was halted by the arrival of the very man he was about to think of. From around the nearest corner, the flame hero himself came walking, not even noticing Izuku at first, but that quickly changed. Endeavor. I was looking for you. Endeavor said in a surprisingly calm voice. Midoriya, correct, I believe we met a couple months prior. Why yeah, we did. Izuku gulped, his throat feeling very dry. He was taken aback by the fact that the hero even remembered meeting him at Sector 7, if he was being honest. It's been a while. So, why are you back here? Endeavor responded by pointing directly at the boy. I watched your fight against that brainwashing guy, as well as your match with your other classmate. Your power is pretty impressive. To create so much wind pressure just by flexing your fingers, it reminds me of another quirk. He narrowed his eyes slightly. You seem to have much in common with All Might, if I'm not mistaken. Izuku was about to freeze at the accusation, but he reminded himself not to. Otherwise, Endeavor would have gotten more suspicious. Oh, well, I honestly never thought of it that way. I've had my suspicions since we met at that base, especially since All Might was there with you and your friends. Endeavor raised a single brow. Tell me, are you All Might's pupil? If you mean he often gives me pointers on how I can control my power during class, then, I suppose. Izuku bowed curtly to the hero before continuing through the hall. I'm sorry, but I should be going. As he walked, Izuku couldn't help but start thinking a mile a minute, specifically about how bad it'd be if Endeavor ever found out about One for All. Whatever the case may be, it is my Shoto's duty to surpass All Might as the #1 hero. Those words made Izuku stop in his tracks, listening as Endeavor made his case. And this match with you will be a good testing ground for how much training he has left. So hit him hard. Don't disgrace yourself or him by holding back. In that moment, Izuku flashed back to what Shoto had said about wanting to reject his father's quirk, only using his mother's power to win the festival. And, after experiencing the man firsthand here, he was starting to really get where the resentment came from. And, before he knew it, the #2 hero was about to take his leave. That's all I wanted to say. I apologize for bothering you. Endeavor didn't get very far, however, before Izuku spoke up. Endeavor, I am not All Might. What are you talking about? And the same goes for Todoroki. Izuku peered over his shoulder, meeting Endeavor's gaze with a hard stare. He may be your son, but he isn't you. I'm going to give it my all, but not because you asked me to. Now please, excuse me. And with that, Izuku made for the entry tunnel, all while Endeavor stared after him. Why do I suddenly feel a million pounds lighter? Back up in the higher levels, Tenya had found a secluded spot to make his call, patiently waiting as the other end of the line kept ringing. After the 4th ring, he heard a click, and he automatically spoke. Hey, are you there, Tensai? It's Tenya. I am currently on a mission and cannot answer the phone. Please leave a message. Oh, voicemail. Tenya muttered in disappointment, choosing to hang up rather than leave a message as he went back to his seat. Ah well, it was worth a try. We'll talk soon, brother. Little did the younger Iida sibling know that his brother's mission was of the utmost importance. Dashing through the streets of Hosu City, the armored hero, Ingenium, kept a sharp eye out for the target that he was searching for, all while emergency sirens blared around him. As he ran, he was also coordinating his sidekicks, who were separated into their own search teams. Squad A, head north. Squad B, check the west side. He ordered through his helmet's comm device. After receiving affirming replies from his sidekicks, Ingenium blasted past an alleyway, only for a chill to go up his spine at the feeling of being watched. He stopped on a dime, his head whipping back around. Back there, using his booster engines, Ingenium leapt up and did a kickflip off the side of one of the buildings, in order to vault over to the opposite side of the alley. No doubt about it, it's him. He landed on his feet and spun toward his target. He couldn't see him in the darkened space, but there was no doubt about it, he had found him. The hunched frame, the unruly hair, the tattered scarves and bandages tied all around his body, and the piercing glare that seemed to glow red in the darkness. "I've found you," Tensai hollered at his target, getting his full attention. Hero Killer. Chapter 32, Shoto Todoroki, Origin. On the bridge of the dark side, the general mood of the Decepticons had gone from rather bored and unimpressed to excited and full of vigor. The first round had been mostly disappointing with a few exceptions, but these matches had been different. These were the ones that they had been waiting for since the start of the tournament, where the competitors were actually making an effort to do battle properly instead of screw around on the battlefield. And needless to say, they couldn't get enough of it. Oh ho, Lord Megatron doesn't know what he's missing. Skywarp smirked as he watched Ajiro go down to Bakugo's explosive attacks. Now this is exactly what I was hoping for from the start, unrestrained violence. I wouldn't exactly call it, unrestrained, warp. Swift pointed out. For as much as these kids are beating the hell out of each other, they're still making sure they don't, maim one another or anything. Skywarp grumbled at that. HMPH, unfortunately. Thundercracker glanced to his brother worriedly. What is your obsession with seeing young organics trying to kill one another? When you've been in space for eons, brother, you take what entertainment you can get. Alright, let's not distract ourselves too much from the event, shall we? Starscream butted into the conversation, giving his brothers a short glare before setting his sights back on the screen, where Izuku, Shoto, Keita and Katsuki's faces were all displayed. We have our final four. The semi-finals are bound to be much more intense than the previous round. Down below, Frenzy couldn't help but cackle in delight, the saw blade in his chest spinning and producing sparks. Ahaha, perfect. Bring on the wanton violence. Duh, Blastwave agrees with the mini-con. The big, green Decepticon took a swig of his oil, finishing off the barrel before crushing it on his head like a tin can. And bring more oil. He slurred, his optics seemingly filled with a drunken haze. We need more oil. Bring it now. He belched out. Flatline quickly looked down to a Viacon with a serious gaze. You heard him, Dumbcoff. Go get some more oil before he takes off our heads in a drunken rage. The Viacon quickly rushed out of the room to please the Decepticon bruiser, though Flatline was quick to take notice of Unicronus seemingly deep in thought. A Shanix for your thoughts, General. You say something, Doc. The Dark Con glanced up. You have been quiet silent for some time. Is there something on your mind? Nothing important. Unicronus brushed off. I was just hoppin' that Lord Megatron would stick around, or even be back before this round ended. He folded his arms over his chest with a small scowl. I mean, I get that getting a hit on an Autobot base is important, but the fact that some of these small and powerful creatures are allying with the Autobots, it's a bit worrisome. Overhearing this, Shadow Striker hummed in agreement. I understand your concern, General. The fact that they were able to fight against us is one thing, but if any of they say other children join with the Autobots, we could be looking at a whole mess of trouble. Nitra finished, swiveling around in her chair. However, Barricade shook his head. That's what you think, but honestly, I don't think the Autobots would chance it. Sure, they've got the faculty of an entire school on their side, along with a few students and the #1 hero. He raised a single finger to them. But think about this, do y'all really think that Prime would even consider bringing on more allies, especially after what we did, kidnapping one of them? Something tells me he'll be making more of an effort to keep our war a secret, so we could use that to our advantage. This managed to catch Unicronus' attention. Barricade had always been a masterful tactician, especially when it came to sabotaging the enemy, so he would be remiss to not hear him out. And what you think we should do about that, Barricade? But, before he could explain, I can feel the anticipation in the stadium. And that's because the first match of the semi-finals is gonna be epic. That annoying announcer again. Skywarp grumbled. Blastwave has had enough of loud man's stupid voice. The drunken tank stood up and went to punch the screen, only for the three Seekers to immediately get out of their seats to hold him back. Let Blastwave at the loud man. Blastwave, Uzi, Starscream, Thundercracker and Skywarp all let out collective yelps as Blastwave fell unconscious in his drunken stupor, landing right on top of them. The bruiser's snoring was about as loud as the vehicle mode he turned into, meaning he was out like a light. Thundercracker deadpanned at the situation. Of course he got this tanked up. Why didn't I expect anything less? Get us out from under here. Starscream hollered. Swift smirked and winked. Happy to, right after this match ends. Barricade couldn't help but grin at the Seeker Commander's misfortune, but he affirmed Swift's words to Unicronus as well. She's right, we'll wait until the tournament is over, then I'll tell you my plan. Unicronus nodded to him, setting his optics back onto the screen with the others. Back in the stadium, the crowd was roaring in excitement and eagerness as the competitors took to the battlefield below, all while Present Mike made the introductions. It's the guy who won his first match by a landslide and literally left half the audience frozen. The hero course's Shoto Todoroki. Shoto locked his eyes onto his opponent. This was the moment he had been waiting for. And this kid, no matter where he places in the festival, is sure to remain one of its main talking points for his surprising yet incredible performance thus far. Also from the hero course, Izuku Midoriya. As much as Izuku felt bashful at the thought of him being a sticking point of this festival, he couldn't afford to lose his concentration now. This was it, the long-awaited confrontation between the festival's foremost frontrunners. The declaration of war was about to come to pass. It's now, or never. So, here we are. Shoto started. And only one of us can win. Izuku returned. Up in the stands, almost every student in 1A was shaking with anticipation, and if they weren't, they were doing a good job of keeping themselves under control. This is going to be intense, I can just feel it. Ochako whispered. Tenya, who had returned only a minute before, eyed his vice representative. Yaoyorozu, how do you think this match will go? After having returned from her own match, Momo had taken the time to think over everything she had observed of the four remaining competitors so far. And, after mulling it over a bit in her head, she came up with an answer. Well, it depends on whether or not Midoriya is able to get in close to Todoroki. Her gaze concentrated on Izuku intensely. And with his full cowling, that's a strong possibility, but still. Yeah. Mina nodded, feeling somewhat sober with the powerful atmosphere around her. Getting frozen in place could still be a problem for Midori. It's alright. Kyoka piped up, her confident tone taking everyone aback as she smiled down to her best friend. Izuku will be able to do it, I've got no doubt. With a balled fist, Tenya grit his teeth in determination. You hold him in such high regard, Jiro, it is to be commended. You're right, I'm certain that Midoriya must have a plan. Both of these heroes in training have been frontrunners in the sports festival. But which of these rivals will advance to the finals? Present Mike was practically out of his seat as he gave the go-ahead. Prepare for, Midoriya vs Todoroki. Begin. The two boys wasted no time in getting into combat-ready stances, with Izuku noticing how Shoto was putting more pressure on his right leg. He'll start with an ice attack. I can't allow him to use that power of his too much. Shoto thought to himself before letting loose, sending a huge wave of ice at Izuku from his leg. There. Full cowling, 10%. Izuku charged his power up and leapt incredibly high into the air, avoiding the ice spires just in the nick of time before landing on the highest one. But he didn't have much time to relax as another, smaller wave came at him. Alright, now. Detroit Smash, 10%. Just as the ice was about to make contact, Izuku punched his way through the spire, creating a small burst of wind that left a hole directly through it. He then leapt from hole and began sliding down the spire. Shoto furrowed his brow at the move. HMPH, should have guessed, he's going to rely on his speed and concentrated power to deal with my long-range attacks. I'll need to take him by surprise. Izuku, meanwhile, was having similar thoughts. I don't know much about Todoroki's fighting style. His attacks are so fast that it's hard to collect data on him. So, during this fight, I need to keep my focus up. He saw Shoto place his hand on the icy path before him, making a series of spikes come jutting out of the ground and head straight for him. Izuku had to stop on a dime and leap away, just narrowly escaping the spikes. It was then that he noticed something. Shoto had created a small ice wall behind him, almost as if to prop himself up against it. And Izuku quickly realized why. I see, so he's expecting me to use my fingers to try and blow him out. He's probably surprised that I didn't immediately go for that yet. He quickly made a beeline and continued on his course, leaping down toward Shoto. If that's the case, then I'm just going to have to get up close and personal. What is he? Ah. Without a second to spare, Shoto had to move out of the way to avoid Izuku's incoming attack, the greenette punching through the ice wall behind him. Crap, he figured it out. Gotta move, fast. He created an ice path from his leg and slid away from Izuku on it, only for the quirk inheritor to give chase on foot. Ejiro was practically sprinting toward his class box, knowing that he was very likely missing Midoriya's match given how loud the crowd was cheering. Crap, if I didn't need to go to the nurse's office after that match, I would've made it. The second he made it out of the stairwell into the stands, he saw that indeed, Midoriya was fighting Todoroki, and it looked like it was off to one hell of a start. Gah, crap, I'm missing it. Yo, Kirishima. Denki waved from the seats, garnering everyone's attention. Where've ya been? The match just started. Sorry, but Recovery Girl kept me back forever. Ejiro dashed down to take a seat, only to feel someone grab into his arm. Hey, what's the big, huh? He stopped struggling once he saw that it was Sid, the disguised Autobot wearing a sympathetic grin. Hey, you did pretty great out there, Ejiro. Sorry that you didn't make it, though. But Ejiro simply shrugged it off with a smile. Hey, thanks, man. But don't worry, it's no biggie. There's always next year, and I'm happy being in the top 8. He craned his head down toward the battle, where Midoriya was in hot pursuit of Todoroki. Right now, though, I'm more concerned about Midoriya. He's dealing with an opponent whose attacks can blast the whole stadium, after all. Well, yeah, but so can his. Buck pointed out. That is, if he decides he wants to risk breaking his fingers again. True, but if he does, he'll need to pause between attacks. Zero added in. Meanwhile, Todoroki doesn't need to do that. Midoriya's in a bind here, that's for sure. Sato said grimly. However, Orion's thoughts differed from the students. I doubt it is that easy, children. Instantly, all eyes were on the Prime as he explained his thinking. You see, if you overuse your muscles, you risk tearing them. If you sprint too much, you run out of breath. After all, the human body does have its own limitations, and in my studies, I've found that quirks are very much the same. Sadie tilted her head toward her leader. What do you mean by that, sir? Quirks may be special abilities, but they have a physical effect on the body. Optimus flashed back to his time training with Izuku, where he had taken mental notes on how One for All would affect the boy in more ways than just one, especially after long periods of time. It is highly inadvisable to use them non-stop. Huh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Ojiro muttered. Wonder if that's what Midoriya will think is gonna help him against Todoroki, ribbit. Suyu put a finger to her chin. Orion nodded. Very likely. He knows how much young Todoroki used his ice in the prior rounds, especially in his match against young Zero, so he must be counting on his ice slowing down. He saw the tape user cringe at that part, to which Hao bowed his head. My apologies. And nice try. That only made Zero feel marginally better. You want an endurance match? Shoto said as he finally came to a stop, bringing up another small ice wall behind him. Either he didn't notice or he didn't care, but the right side of his body was beginning to frost over a little bit. Fine, but I'll end this quickly. In a split second, he sent out another barrage, only for Izuku to charge straight in and chop through it. Smash! As Izuku burst through the ice, he kept his eyes straight on Shoto, anticipating what he might do next. He's probably figured out that long-range attacks won't be enough, so if I'm right, wasting no time, Shoto created a huge ice bridge, which he quickly went sprinting up to meet Izuku halfway. Yes, there. He came to a sudden landing and jumped straight back, avoiding his opponent at the last second. All the while, Present Mike presented the question that was on Izuku and everyone else's mind. Todoroki's keepin' that ice comin', but how long can he keep it up? Shoto seemed to answer that by placing his hand on the ground as he landed, sending another wave of ice that managed to catch Izuku on the foot. However, the proved futile as Izuku used his other foot to free himself. Alright, I think I've got him, huh? Izuku's confidence in that thought didn't last for much longer, though, as he saw Shoto beginning to create even more waves of ice, which began spreading throughout the battlefield. Oh no, if he does that, I'll be blasted out in no time. Izuku glanced down to his hand as he landed, knowing what he had to do. I've been saving them for a moment like this, so it's now or never. I might need 2 of them for this. Thus, the quirk inheritor put the middle and ring finger of his left hand together and moved them under his thumb, as if he were making a devil horns gesture, before aiming toward the towers of ice that were coming his way. He braced himself as he focused one for all into his 2 fingers, and then, SMAAAASH. Boom. Immediately, a wild wind whipped up throughout the whole stadium and burst through the incoming ice wave, creating a massive blast of cold air that whirled into the audience. But while the spectators might have been freezing, that didn't keep their focus off the battle below. Whoa, Midoriya just pulled out the same trick he used on Shinso. But was it enough to blow Todoroki away? With his 2 fingers now broken, Izuku breathed hard, thankful that he was still in the ring. Of course, the pain in his hand sucked, but at this point, he was at least used to it. He stared through the white mist that had been kicked up by his attack, not seeing any sign of Shoto, until a large pile of ice suddenly moved. That was much more powerful than your previous attacks. A gasp escaped Izuku's lips as Shoto emerged, pushing a massive hunk of ice off of him. You're trying to keep me away. Smart. Izuku couldn't help but gape in awe at how his opponent managed to stay in the match, though Shoto wasn't having much of it. What's the matter? You can't be worn out just from that one attack alone. Or is defending from my attacks what's wearing you down? Izuku's mind was racing, trying to come up with a new strategy as his eyes took in every detail around him. Come on, come on, there's gotta be. Wait, it was then that he saw that Shoto's right side was now even more frosted over, and he was physically shivering. He's shaking. Is he reaching some kind of limit? Whatever the case, I've gotta keep fighting. I'm sorry about this, but thank you for drawing it out. At Shoto's odd compliment, Izuku made a confused sound, to which the monochromatic boy glanced up to his father in the audience, and it was obvious that Endeavor wasn't too happy. Look at him. He's furious that I'm not using his power. I don't have to rely on his damn fire quirk. Izuku remembered the words, clear as day. You see, I'm going to show that bastard that I reject his power, and take first place in the festival. The memory made Izuku clench his jaw, but not at the fact that Shoto wanted to win. That's it, he whispered. There's no use going on if you're just gonna start breaking your hands. Shoto widened his stance, ready to go again. So why don't we end this? Putting pressure on his right leg again, Shoto sent out another wave of ice spires straight at Izuku. Todoroki continues his overwhelming attacks. Present Mike leaned forward in anticipation. Could this be his finishing move? But Izuku didn't move from his spot. If anything, he seemed resolute not to move at all as he snapped his head up, furrowing his brow at Shoto. I'm not done yet. He lifted his left hand once again and prepped his pointer finger, flicking it and destroying the massive ice wave. Shoto stared back in surprise as Izuku declared to him, I've still got 5 fingers, maybe 7 if I can somehow use my thumbs, but you're trembling, Todoroki. His left hand trembled as he said this, but he grit through the pain. It's easy to forget that quirks are physical abilities, and that means there's a limit to the cold your body can take, right? As Shoto stood there, he tried to keep his shivering under control, only to find that his body resisted him. Damn, he figured it out. I get it. You usually make up for the drop in temperature by using the heat from your left side. But you refuse to do that now. Izuku stood up straight, wearing a determined expression as he spoke truthfully to Shoto. Listen, we're all giving it our all, to try and win. To make our dreams into a reality. To become number 1. You think you can win with only half your strength. He balled his damaged left hand. Look at me, Todoroki. You haven't been able to put a scratch on me yet. So come at me with all you've got. The white and red-haired boy narrowed his gaze at his classmate, wondering just what was going on. Midoriya, what are you trying to do here? You want my fire. His glare hardened as a certain thought crossed his mind. What, did my monster of a dad bribe you or something? With that thought fueling his rage, he lunged for Izuku. Now, I'm mad. As I thought, his movements are slower. Izuku noted as Shoto ran, his right side slowing him down. He probably wasted a lot of energy on his previous battles, especially the one with Zero. He started charging full cowling up once more. It's time to make the most of this opportunity. In close quarters, there's no way he'll zoom. In the corner of his eye, Izuku appeared, making Shoto do a double take. What? Too slow. Wham! With a 10% powered punch, Izuku socked Shoto straight in the gut, sending him flying back several feet. The very cold young man tried to regain himself by flipping in midair and landing on his feet, creating another small ice wall to stop himself. But, the moment he hit the ice, Izuku was right there in front of him again, delivering another blow to the gut and blasting Todoroki straight through the ice wall. Before he did, though, Shoto's hand grazed Midoriya's arm, freezing it partially. Izuku saw this, and then flexed his arm, breaking the ice with ease. For his part, Present Mike was astonished. Unbelievable. Midoriya has landed not one, but two sucker punches. And he's at the point where Todoroki's ice isn't even hindering him. What is this kid made out of, glass or steel? Shoto had gotten the wind knocked straight out of him, sending him into a coughing fit. Hawk hawk hawk, why? He touched his hand to the ground, sending out a smaller and much slower ice attack at Izuku, which he easily dodged by leaping out of the way. The ice isn't moving as fast now. Just as he avoided the attack, Todoroki came charging straight for him on a small wave of ice, but Izuku countered by flicking his pinky. Smash! But, to his own surprise, Shoto seemed to anticipate this, leaping off at the last possible moment to evade the burst of air and get in close to try and land a few punches of his own. In the stands, the students of 1A were practically on the edge of their seats as they watched the match unfold, with Kyoka practically leaning over the balcony just so she didn't miss a thing. Holy crap, I don't think anyone could have expected this happening, the punk rocker noted. Green Bean and Todoroki are just locked in this fight. Agreed, it's quite amazing. Tenya concurred. Such concentration, such vigor. I only wish I could have put forth that much intensity during our fight. Ochako had her hands firmly clenched on her lap, biting her lower lip nervously. Come on, Deku, you've got this. He's been doing pretty great so far. Sunny agreed. Guy's been making sure he doesn't overdo it too much. It was that which got Toru to speak up, the invisible girl raising her arms to make sure she was noticed. Hello. Are we, like, watching the same match here? Midoriya's breaking his fingers again. I think that might count as overdoing it. If you can believe it, it actually is not. Orion countered, the Autobot leader having stood up to make his way toward the balcony's edge. You see, prior to his training to control his quirk, young Izuku would have surely broken both his hands and maybe even worse at this point. However, since he has discovered his full cowling technique, he has been able to find a good medium to balance the power output of his quirk. Sato scratched the back of his head. So why is he still breaking his fingers? Namely because he still wishes to use his full strength however he can for this battle. Orion elaborated, propping himself by his arms on the balcony. It is a bold strategy, but an effective one. Izuku knows that he cannot normally blow young Todoroki's ice away with his regular full cowling strikes, but if he puts out just a little bit of his full power with each finger flick, he'll be able to do so. He pointed down to the greenette, noting his uninjured right hand. However, Izuku isn't foolhardy, he's saving one good hand for what will surely be his finishing blow. Momo put a finger to her chin, nodding in understanding. A good point, Orion, but he doesn't have any more fingers on that hand to flick. She saw Shoto leap away from Izuku and send out another massive ice wave, greatly worrying her. So what if that happens? However, the Prime simply smiled knowingly. Oh, I think you'll find that he does. Izuku clenched his teeth as the ice approached him. I can't risk my good hand, so, he took his left thumb and stuck it into the corner of his lip, aiming his cheek at the ice as he put 100% of one for all into that finger. Shmosh. He flicked his thumb with his lip, breaking it and opening a small cut inside his cheek, but blasting the ice and Shoto back in one fell swoop. Todoroki once again went skidding backward, but caught himself with another ice wall, now feeling absolutely frigid. Why are you putting yourself through this? He asked as he fell to one knee. Because I wanna live up to people's expectations. The answer took Shoto off guard as Izuku charged straight for him again. I wanna be able to smile while doing something good for them. I wanna be a pro. He reared his fist back and socked Shoto in the gut once more, while the latter was still taking in the answer. Whatever it takes, I will be a hero. That's why I'll give it everything I have, just like you should be. He watched as Shoto staggered back, clenching his gut as he continued to shiver. There's no way I can know what you've been going through, Todoroki, or why you're even here. He clenched his broken fingers and placed them over his heart. Your life has been so much different than mine, but right now, he bared his teeth and yelled, "Stop screwing around." That made Shoto gasp, reeling in shock. If you want to reject your father, then fine. But you don't have the right to be number one if you are going to use your full power. Shoto could do nothing but stare at Midoriya, all while his words suddenly began unearthing a memory he had locked away deep inside his mind. 5-year-old Shoto Todoroki was in the most agonizing pain he had ever experienced in his life. And it had become a daily occurrence. His father, Enji Todoroki, also known as the number 2 pro hero Endeavor, had been relentlessly training him practically since he had been potty trained, and to say that it was one of the worst experiences ever was an understatement. Every day, blow after blow, it wouldn't get any easier for him, and on this day, Endeavor had socked him hard enough in the gut that he threw up his breakfast. So, as he knelt there on the floor near his father's feet, coughing and gagging, the red-haired man felt absolutely no sympathy. Now stand up. If you get hurt that easily, you can forget about beating All Might, or even a small-time villain. Please, stop pushing him. Shoto could feel his mother's hands touch his back, the boy taking in the fleeting comfort as she implored her husband to halt the training. He's only 5 years old. He can take it, Endeavor said forcefully, before Shoto felt a chill once he heard a powerful smack and a pained yelp soon after. Get out of my way. Shakily, the little boy brought his head up, horrified to see his mother sprawled across the floor, her long, white hair blocking her face. Mama. In the present, Shoto felt his right side begin to freeze up, his frustration growing as Izuku closed in. Shut up. Several days after the incident, Shoto found himself crying in his mother's arms, a rare moment of solitude as Endeavor had gone out to work. Still, that didn't help ease the pain any better. I don't wanna do this, Mom. Shoto pleaded between heavy sobs, clutching his mother's shirt. Please, I don't wanna be the kind of guy he is. I don't wanna be someone who bullies you and hurts people, Mama. But honey, you do still want to be a hero, don't you? Shoto felt her stroking his hair and he brought his eyes up, though he couldn't bear to look past her smile. He knew if he did, he would see a pair of sad eyes. Just remember, stay true to yourself. You can be the kind of hero you want to be. That's why I'm gonna win this. Izuku's shout briefly broke Shoto out of his memories, only to send him right back in with a strong, right hook with full cowling. I'll surpass you. Shoto stared down from the balcony within his home, watching as his older siblings all played with one another while their grandmother watched. He wished he could go play with them, but the hard, vice-like grip he suddenly felt around his wrist reminded him otherwise. He was pulled along by Endeavor, no doubt bringing him to that dungeon he called a training room. Ignore them, Shoto. They live in a different world than the one I'm training you for. The boy wished that wasn't the case. About a week later, Shoto had woken up and started making his way to the kitchen, hoping to find breakfast waiting. But what he instead came across was something much more frightening. Mom, I feel like I'm going crazy. The boy paused at the open door and peered inside, seeing his mother standing in front of a hot stove with a tea kettle boiling on top of it. She was speaking to his grandma, no doubt. I can't take it anymore. Every day, the children seem more like him. And Shoto, that child's left side sometimes looks unbearable to me. All I can see is his father. I can't raise him anymore. I want to run away from this life. Mom, Shoto spoke, letting his presence known. What are you saying? His mother gasped, her head slowly and shakily moving around to him. Her eyes were filled with horror as she saw her son, all while the tea kettle filled with boiling water whistled in her ear. And then, wham, Endeavor forcefully closed the door after returning home, his ever-present scowl even more grimacing than usual. Not far away, Shoto stood, with half of his face bandaged as he kept his head low. "Moronic woman," Endeavor grumbled, spotting Shoto out the corner of his eye. "To hurt you at such an important time. Where did Mama go?" Endeavor turned fully at his son's question. "Oh, she hurt my masterpiece, so I put her in a hospital to keep you safe." Shoto grit his teeth, accepting the new feeling of contempt and hatred he had for his father as he cried in sorrow. "That was your fault. You're the one who made her hurt me. I remember," Shoto murmured as he stood up, still reeling from Izuku's blow. However, his intentions remained resolute, even now. "I will reject you. I refuse to use my left side. It's yours," Izuku screamed. "Your quirk, not his." Shoto let out another gasp, feeling another memory work its way to the surface. During one of the moments of respite he and his mother had, they had decided to watch some TV together, where a certain number one hero was currently giving an interview. That's right, children often do inherit quirks from their parents, or develop similar power sets. All Might explained, his bright smile permeating through the screen. But the most important thing to remember is that a quirk is what you make of it, regardless of your history. You decide how you'll use it. That's what I mean when I say, I am here. He pointed toward the camera, making Shoto's smile widen. Only you can decide to become a hero, no one else. Take this to heart, kids. All Might gave a thumbs up. You can do it. Honey, you do still want to be a hero, don't you? Just remember, stay true to yourself. With his mother's words ringing through his ears, Shoto felt something begin to stir inside of him. I didn't realize how much I'd forgotten. You are not a prisoner of your lineage. As he continued to hear his mother's voice, the new feeling inside of Shoto began to flicker, before becoming a small ember, which then grew into a full flame. It's okay to use your power. The flame expanded into a burning fire, to become who you want to be. And then, that fire exploded into a blazing inferno. Izuku couldn't believe his eyes as Shoto's entire right suddenly became engulfed in a tornado of flames, an incredibly warm sensation coming over him and everyone else in the stadium. But this feeling made him smile nonetheless. Yes. Even up in the commentary booth, present Mike was having a hard time believing it. What is that? Up in 1A's seats, the students couldn't believe the intensity of the heat that was being projected at them, to the point that Ochako had to bring her hands up to her face to try and block it. He's using his fire. Incredible. Tenya muttered. You made him use his dad's power. Kyoka muttered to herself, wearing a small smirk. Izuku, I can't tell if you're brave or stupid for trying to save him, but one thing's for sure, for one guy, you care about people way more than you should, and to me, that's way cool. As the Autobots also stared in awe, Optimus was also smiling to himself, looking down at the two boys with pride. Well done, both of you. He nodded, glancing over to Kyoka. It would seem that the two of them have come to an understanding. He saw the punk rocker's confused gaze, so he pointed down to the two. Do you see? They're both smiling. Kyoka blinked as she took a second glance, seeing that Prime's assessment was true. Todoroki was smiling just as much as Izuku was, as if he had just been freed from a massive weight. Guess he is. They have found common ground. Optimus affirmed, only to hear someone shouting from the other side of the stadium. His sights trailed up and he saw Endeavor, the hero having made his way to the front row as he bellowing out unintelligible words that he couldn't hear. The flame hero also seemed to be smiling, though it was one that was disconcerting. Kyoka, what is he saying? Unfortunately, Kyoka could hear him, and while the words from Endeavor's mouth sounded like praise, she knew that what made him happy didn't make Shoto happy. Something so selfish and naive that I don't wanna repeat it to you. Prime hummed. Back down on the field, Todoroki finally spoke up to Izuku, all while his flames flew around him. You're helping your opponent, you fool. Even thought you wanna win this battle. Now which one of us is screwing around? If anything, that just made Izuku's smile grow even more, especially with what Shoto had to say next. I want it, too. I'll be a hero. Amazing. Izuku muttered. Why are you smiling? I could say the same about you. Shoto scoffed, trying to hide his grin the best he could. HMPH, you must be crazy, hurting yourself to use your full power. He knelt close to the ground, his body now moving freely now that it was warmed up. So don't blame me for what happens next. Within seconds, Todoroki began expelling another burst of ice from his right foot, all while his flames kept lashing around him. The mixture of the hot and cold air that came from this only helped whip up the wind even more. In response, Izuku powered up full cowling and charged straight in. On the sidelines, though, Smintos was beginning to grow concerned. Midnight, should we stop them? The force of their attacks could end up injuring them more severely than anything we've seen thus far. Midnight hummed, the slightest hint of a smile on her lips. Normally, I'd say yes, but I also kind of want to see what happens. Smintos gave her a deadpan stare, which she waved off. Oh, relax, you know we can stop them at any time, right? Yes, but still, wait, did your ears pop like mine just did? Midnight's expression became a bit more anxious as she too felt her ears pop, her head snapping toward the battle. The waves of ice that Todoroki had sent at Midoriya before had all paled in comparison to this latest construct, the ice crystals seemingly almost growing out of the ground while the blaze kept burning around him. The mix of heat and cold served to drastically change the air pressure in a single second, and that's when Midnight knew this could be bad. She ripped at her costume and began using her somnambulist quirk. On second thought, maybe we should do something. Way ahead of you, Smintos said as he placed his hand on the field. Meanwhile, Izuku was still bounding through the icy upsurge with full cowling, readying his right fist as he closed in on Shoto. This is it, the reason I was saving this hand. Gotta try and get close. After one last, strong leap, Izuku poured the entirety of One for All into his right arm, effectively ripping the short sleeve thanks to the power alone. And give it everything I've got. He could feel his ears pop as Shoto switched straight to favoring his fire once again, the air pressure changing instantly as hot and cold mixed around them. Come at me with your full power, Todoroki. All the while, Todoroki brought up his left hand, ready to send out his attack. I see now, Midoriya, thank you. Right before the two energies could collide, though, 5 large cement walls came bursting out of the battlefield, which were immediately annihilated. Izuku blasted through 3 of them while Shoto's blast destroyed the others, allowing a clear path for both boys to make an impact on one another. And then, boom, a huge burst of light, wind and sheer force exploded from the very center of the stadium, sending debris flying out everywhere. The audience were either left screaming or completely dumbstruck as a pillar of wind blew straight up through the stadium, catching the attention of even those outside. In the stands, the students has to brace themselves as the gale belted through, threatening to even take some of them off their feet. Gah! Holy shit! Kyoka screamed. This is insane. Denki hollered as well. Momo closed her eyes, the wind lashing at her face. What is going on down there? Optimus and the other Autobots were left just as astonished as the students, though thanks to their holoforms, they were left unaffected by the wind. Still, they could all practically feel the force of that blow, and needless to say, it rocked them to their very cores. Holy fragging scrap! Buck exclaimed. Where is all this power coming from? How in Vector Sigma are these kids this strong? Stella shouted. The Prime himself wasn't completely sure himself, but he knew that when the wind died down, they would learn who would be moving on to the final round. There is no way either of them could go on fighting after this. Though the true question is, who will it be moving forward? Back at the Autobot base, Windblade, Springer and Red Alert were left in a fairly similar state of awe and stunned silence, the 3 bots in utter disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Having gone through war for eons, they were no strangers to huge explosions, but the fact that 2 small, juvenile organic beings were the ones to cause that blast, it was a lot to process. Windblade had to manually pull her jaw back up, she was so shocked. What, in Primus' name, just happened? Springer had to slap himself to make sure he was seeing things right. What is with these kids? How the pit did they pull this off? It's simple, really. Red Alert held up his hand as he explained. The air around the ring had been thoroughly cooled down, and then rapidly expanded when heated up. The change in pressure combined with the force of their attacks resulted in, well, that. So that's what caused that massive explosion. Windblade put her hand to her forehead, feeling the need to sit down. Geez, how hot did that fire even get? Springer added, crossing his arms over his chest. Glad those two are on the good guy's side. He narrowed his optics at the screen as the dust and smoke continued to permeate through the battlefield. But who won? I can't see a thing. Windblade felt a bit of nerves building up inside of her. Yeah, is the match even still going on? Red Alert shook his head. After something like that, I doubt it. Smintos and Midnight both struggled up onto their feet, the two of them having been blown back several feet from the arena. Midnight's domino mask had even been blown off her face, leaving it nowhere to be found. The cement hero rubbed the back of his head as his sights settled on the now destroyed battlefield. Having a great power doesn't necessarily mean you'll be a great hero, but these two are amazing. What the heck is going on down there? Present Mike asked. Is the match over? Where are the students? I'm getting to it. Midnight snapped as she collected herself, dashing back to her position to find the boys. As the smoke cleared out, though, it didn't take her long to do so, and the results were astonishing. Izuku Midoriya, with 5 broken fingers and a broken arm, had been blown out of the ring, propped up against the far wall near his entry tunnel. And Shoto Todoroki was in the very same position on the opposite side. It was evident that Todoroki had tried to stop himself with another small ice wall, but the impact had been so forceful that he had been blown straight through. Midnight watched as both boys collapsed to the ground, unconscious. She took a deep breath as she made her conclusion: both Midoriya and Todoroki are out of bounds. And since it is unclear who was blown out first, Midnight raised her flag into the air. I'm ruling this match as a draw. The entire stadium erupted into a sea of uproarious cheers, the audience undoubtedly the loudest it had been all day. The students of Class 1A and 1B were completely silent, though, still reeling from what they had just seen along with the result of the match. Orion Pax, however, was both pleasantly surprised, and not surprised at the same time. I had a feeling that something like this would be the outcome, though it definitely wasn't the most expected. Hee. That was crazy. May bounced up out of her seat, pumping a fist into the air. I can't believe how insane all of that was. You can say that again. Ochako agreed as she watched Izuku and Shoto being stretchered out to the back. What do you think happens now? Another tie-breaker. Well, I know one thing, we're in for yet another break. Iida stood up as well, raising a hand to his friends. Why don't we all take advantage of that and see how Midoriya is doing? No doubt we'll find him and Todoroki in Recovery Girl's office. Jeff got up too, though he was keen on holding the kids back a bit. Whoa, let's slow roll there, Tenya. Let's wait till Izuku's at least conscious, before we head on down there, ya dig? Kyoka nodded at that. Yeah, besides, I think he and Todoroki will need some time to, well, sort things out between them. Indeed. Orion concurred as well. Those boys have much to discuss, I'm sure. On the dark side, meanwhile, the bridge room had been left in complete silence ever since the explosion initially happened. Even as Izuku and Shoto were being carried into the stadium after their draw, no Decepticon spoke a single word. What they had just seen was unlike anything they had ever witnessed before. 2 infantile organics had just created an explosion the force of which could be compared to a small Decepticon explosive or even one of Lugnet's punches. Swift, Nitra and Shadow Striker were all slightly trembling, though the latter was at least trying to compose herself, while Barricade and Flatline had to sit down after seeing that. Unicronus and the 3 Seekers, however, were a different case. They all were initially stunned by the explosion as well, but eventually, they put on rather serious, almost grim expressions. Starscream in particular had his lips twisted in a snarl. How could this happen? They're organics. Creatures like this shouldn't be able to. Blip. Starscream's thoughts were cut off when the second hollow screen came back up again, just in time for them to see Megatron sitting back down in his throne. HMPH, there. Apologies for the delay, but I have returned. Now, what did I miss? You missed everything. Starscream practically jumped out of his chair, a wild glint in his optic as he glared at Megatron. We just witnessed one of the most unbelievable things ever and you only decided now to show up. The dark expression on the Decepticon leader's visage was enough to make Starscream instantly regret saying that. I'm sorry, but could you repeat that, Starscream? Word for word, if you wouldn't mind. I'd rather not. Unicronus quickly interjected. What he means, Lord Megatron, is that while you were gone, we saw something rather disconcerting. The general rewound the recorded footage to the start of the match for Megatron to see. Believe me, you'll wanna see this. He saw Megatron narrow his optics, though he could tell that his leader was intrigued and not angry, thankfully. Inside Recovery Girl's office, Izuku and Shoto were laid out on beds next to one another behind a curtain, the former being treated by Marissa while the elder nurse worked on the ice and fire user. At first, Izuku had been dreading what the two women would have to say to him for breaking his bones once again, but Marissa was surprisingly amicable. You know, I've gotta say, while I'm not thrilled that you keep breaking your hands, I'm pleasantly impressed with how tactically you've been using them. Why you are. I mean, yeah, the fact that you avoided using your primary punching hand until the very end to make sure that it was at its full strength was well thought out. Marissa commended. Plus, you only started flicking your fingers when it was absolutely necessary. Aside from that, your full cowling managed to get you by pretty well. Izuku sighed and laid back, staring up at the ceiling as his right arm and left digits all went numb. Yeah, you could say that. But in the end, he moved his head toward Shoto, who was conscious but kept his eyes closed. It still wasn't enough to get the victory. Shoto said nothing at first, but after a few moments, he cracked his eyes open. Midoriya, can I level with you for a second? This got the Greenette's attention. Yeah, what's up? That was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. His response took Izuku aback, before he then burst out laughing. Ha. Oh man, yeah, same here. If anything, I think diving headlong into fire and ice is even dumber, honestly. Well, what does that say about the person who made that fire and ice happen? Shoto countered in complete deadpan. I'm pretty sure I was the main cause of that explosion. Izuku nodded. Yeah, I see your point. Still, I smashed my arm through 5 concrete walls to try and beat you. I'd say that's pretty dumb. Pretty sure I destroyed at least 2.5 of those. Again, fair, bonk. Ouch. Come on, really. Recovery Girl frowned in disapproval, shaking her head. The two of you can banter about who beat up whom worse later. She glanced between the two of them expectantly. For right now, we need to figure out which one of you boys will be headed into the finals. Izuku became more thoughtful at that. Oh, yeah, right. There's gotta be a winner. Whichever one of us has to go on to either face Kacchan or me. Izuku snapped his head up to see Keita having peeked her head into the curtain, grinning at them with her sharp teeth on display. Kiryu. Oh, Keita, what are you doing here? Todoroki sat up as well, greeting her rather casually, to Izuku's confusion. The Soro Parts user winked and stuck her tongue out. Oh, ya know, just been here the whole time. I've actually just been hanging out in Recovery Girl's office this whole time, actually. Without wasting any time, Recovery Girl and Marissa both made themselves scarce. We'll just leave you all to talk for a little while, the elder healer said. Just remember, don't strain yourselves too much, and we'll be wanting you to stay here for a little while longer to gain your bearings. Why yes, Recovery Girl. Understood. Izuku replied before setting his attention back to Keita. So that's why you haven't joined us in the stands. But, why here? Hey, it's actually the one place where I can collect my thoughts and plan some things out. Keita crossed her arms and closed her eyes. After all, I can hardly concentrate when Baku breath is roaring louder than any carnivore. Gotta think up something good if I wanna beat him. Yeah, makes sense. Izuku scratched his cheek. Though to be honest, what we did I think was even louder than Kacchan. Keita stepped fully through the curtain, pulling up a chair. Yeah, I've been meanin' to ask, how the hell did you two even pull that off? She eyed Todoroki in particular. I mean, I get the feeling most of the energy did come from Shoto, but still. Shoto lowered his head in shame. Well, the cold air rapidly heating up was probably what did it, though Midoriya's punch also added a lot more pressure. Izuku's hand went to his neck timidly. I think we should probably just both take the blame for this. But then, he went back to being perplexed as he asked the two a different question. But did I miss something here? He received head tilts from the duo, his face heating up sheepishly. I mean, you guys just used each other's first names just now. I didn't think you knew each other that well. So you didn't tell him? Shoto eyed Keita, raising a brow. Or any of the others. I'm kinda surprised. Hey, well, I was, but the whole declaration of war thing came up and I didn't wanna make it awkward, ya know. Keita replied before turning to Izuku. See, Midoriya, truth is, Shoto and I went to the same middle school together. With his eyes as wide as dinner plates, Izuku took a second to process that revelation. Hold on, seriously. Wow, I never would have guessed. Yeah, our families are both pretty stacked when it comes to cash, so they could afford to send us to pretty prestigious schools. Keita elbowed Shoto with a playful wink. And it just so happens we went to the same one. Pretty cool, am I right? Shoto coughed into his hand, trying to hide his embarrassed blush. Well, yes, I was there, after all. He put on a small smile as he nodded to the gray-skinned girl. Being honest, those days are ones I'm thankful for. It was the one place I could go to escape him. At the mention of him, Keita noticed Izuku's expression become a bit darker, the brunette nodding in understanding. As she put it together, she couldn't help but stare at Shoto in surprise. Wait, Shoto, don't tell me, her voice lowered to a whisper so neither Recovery Girl or Marissa could hear them. You told him about your dad, too. I did, Shoto affirmed. I felt he had the right to know why I was declaring war on him. His quirk reminded me of All Might, so I felt that if I could beat someone as powerful as All Might without using my father's fire, you'd manage to royally piss him off. Keita deadpanned and smacked her forehead. So that is what this was all about. Shoto, just how many times have I told you that your idea of sticking it to your old man isn't exactly the best way to go about it? Too many. Shoto sighed. But after that fight, I think I finally got that through my head. Keita took her hand and delivered a soft chop to his head. You'd better, or else I'll have to further educate you. She then gave another wink to Izuku. And hey, thanks for knocking some sense into Shoto, Midoriya. I'm not sure what you did, but it's easy to see you helped him a lot. With his hand going to the back of his head once again, Izuku chuckled bashfully. Hee, geez, I don't know if I should take all the credit. I just gave Todoroki a little push, that's all. He put on a more serious demeanor as he asked, so, you know about the Endeavor situation, too? The girl's lips curled into a snarl. Yeah, Shoto told me about halfway into our first middle school year. Grr, I can't stand bullies, but people who abuse their families, they're even worse. Keita sent a soft glare at Shoto. I've been trying to convince him to let me report it, but he said that wouldn't be a good idea. Says I wouldn't want Endeavor on my or my family's asses. She let out a frustrated sigh. And the sad thing is, I believe him. My father's very influential. He can make his problems go away if he throws enough money at it. Shoto muttered. HMPH, and he calls himself a hero. Izuku clenched a fist, the feeling in his hands returning. It's unbelievable. Izuku quickly cut himself off as Recovery Girl came walking back in through the curtain. Our Recovery Girl. What's up? The old woman wore a knowing smile. HMPH, well, what's up, is that you and Todoroki need to decide who gets to move on to the next round, and there's someone here to help decide that for you. She pulled back the curtain and revealed. Why hello boys, there, with her hands placed firmly on her cocked hips, was Midnight. The R-rated hero had replaced the costume she ripped with a new one, as well as retrieved her backup mask. She waltzed over between the boys' beds and eyed both of them with a wily grin. I must say, you two put on quite the spectacular show. Smintas only has half the field repaired. The two boys hung their heads in shame. Sorry about that. Izuku apologized. We went overboard, Shoto furthered, but Midnight just waved their apologies off. Oh, please, don't beat yourselves up over it. The audience loved it, she licked her lips as a passionate feeling rose in her chest. And to be honest, so did I. I couldn't help but feel the intensity that was building between you two. You both are exactly what UA is searching for in future heroes. She raised her flag at both of them. However, this is still a competition where there can only be one winner, and we aren't about to make the main event a three-way dance. So, in order to decide who moves on, something must be done. Shoto nodded in agreement. You're right, but I don't think we have to waste time on that. He craned his head to his former opponent and bowed to him. Midoriya, I feel you should move on. Of all the things that Shoto could have said, that was the one thing that Izuku was expecting the least. Even Kaito was astonished as both of them shouted, "What?" The Greenette instantly began to reason with him. But, Todoroki, you're so much more adept at using your quirk than I am. You've had years to practice it while I'm only just beginning to understand mine. That may be true, but listen to me, Midoriya. Shoto brought his eyes down to his left hand, balling it into a fist as it trembled slightly. After all of that, I feel that I need some time to think things through. I don't know if I'd be able to pull out my fire again so soon. He bowed to Izuku once again. I want to thank you for reminding me that it's my quirk, and that means I decide how to use it, but there's still a lot I need to go over. Todoroki. Izuku smiled and shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not about to let you concede that easily. Let's decide this with a simple game. He held out his fist and presented his idea: rock, paper, scissors. Best 2 out of 3 wins and goes to the next round, K. He craned his head up to Midnight. That's an acceptable challenge, right? Midnight wore an amused smile, but accepted the proposal. Well, it's not conventional, but what the heck, I'll accept it. She raised her flag to start the match. Let the game commence. Shoto breathed out a sigh and raised his fist. Well, right, if you insist. Once they were both ready, the boys pulled their fists back, shouting, Roshambo, and they both ended up with scissors. Roshambo. 2 rocks. Roshambo, and 2 papers. Midoriya, get out of my head. Hey, come on, who said I'm in your head? Izuku cried out. He slapped himself on the cheek and refocused himself. Alright, let's do this, Roshambo. Thankfully, this time, the result was different. Aha, scissors cuts paper, that's a point for me. Don't get too cocky. Hints of a smile came to Shoto's face as he pulled his fist again. Roshambo. This time, the result was in Shoto's favor. HMPH, paper covers rock. Izuku winced at that. Didn't think you'd stick with paper. Alright boys, this is the tie-breaker. Midnight clapped her hands. For all the marbles. Both boys nodded and pulled their fists back one final time. Roshambo. The boys flung their hands forward, and while Izuku didn't notice, Shoto kept his eyes on the Greenette's hand the whole time, delaying his play. And, when he saw what Izuku was going for, he flung out 2 fingers. Once she saw the results, Midnight pulled her flag up once again. Rock beats scissors. Midoriya is moving to the final round. Izuku's mouth hung open for a second, taking in the fact that, despite him suggesting the game in the first place, Shoto's offer was becoming a reality. The red and white-haired teen chuckled and gave a shrug. Well, would you look at that? Guess you're moving to the finals after all. I guess I am. Izuku took a deep breath, letting that sink in. Kind of hard to believe, honestly. Well, don't get too comfy, there, Midoriya. Kaito winked and jerked a thumb to herself. You've still got one more obstacle to overcome, and with any luck, it's gonna be me. I look forward to it. Izuku concurred. Best of luck out there against Kacchan. Shoto gave his own well wishes as well. Yeah, Kaito, good luck. Midnight went over and placed her hand on Kaita's shoulder. Which reminds me, Miss Kiryu, you may want to get down to the tunnel. Your match will be starting as soon as the field's repairs are complete. Oh yeah, sure. I'll be there in a flash. Kaita gave a thumbs up to the boys as she and Midnight made their way to the door. You guys had better cheer for me as loud as you can. See you soon. And with that, she left, leaving Izuku and Shoto to lie back down in their beds. As if on cue, though, Recovery Girl came back, wheeling over a small stand with a flat-screen television on top of it. Well, since you boys won't be going anywhere soon, I've prepared a TV for you to watch your friend's match. She put her fingers to her lips, adding, though if you'd be so kind, keep the cheering quiet, I know she asked otherwise, but we understand. Shoto bowed respectfully. Thank you, Recovery Girl. Once the old woman walked away again, he craned his head over to Izuku once again. So, given that you've known Bakugo for a long time, what do you think is going to happen in this match? Knowing Kaita, she won't back down easily. In all honesty, neither will Kachan. Izuku said worriedly. I think we're bound to see something that's going to rock the foundation of the entire stadium, again. As that was happening, Megatron had just finished watching the match between the two young humans, and it was far from anything that he was expecting. Such raw, visceral power, such untamed might, it was rather alarming. Especially given the fact that it was coming from such small, organic creatures whose fragility was much more than any Cybertronian. That explosion in particular was large enough to take out a Decepticon war machine, and it made Megatron's circuits overheat in contempt. This power. It must be dealt with swiftly. The Decepticon leader clenched his fist and slammed it down on the armrest of his throne. This has only reaffirmed my thinking. To deal with these children, it would be wise to seek the aid of villains. Starscream, Unicronus, I want you both to listen very carefully. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 16 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.